Praised be Jesus and Mary. Saints Cosmas and Damian are two very well-known saints who were born around the middle of the 3rd century in Arabia. They were brothers, twin brothers, who both studied medicine in what's today Syria. And as Christians, they practiced this profession of this medical profession, not only with great skill, but also with great charity, so much so that they offered their services as doctors free of charge to those who had no way of paying them for their services. And they became very prominent in the community, again, for this charity, but also for the great skill with which they exercised their trade, their profession. They were very good at what they did, and they tried hard to be good doctors. So being prominent in the community, when a persecution came around under the reign of Diocletian, the emperor, around 303, they were put to death. They refused to apostatize from the faith, and they gave their life for it. Their life reminds us, their life as holy Christians, but also holy doctors, reminds us of just exactly how important it is that we, in our quest to sanctify ourselves, in our quest for sanctity, we incorporate our daily lives and our professions into this work of sanctification. Our daily life, what we do in our daily lives, is not without importance, and Father Francis Fernandez Carvajal gives us a very beautiful meditation on this subject, which will be the core of our little reflection today. He says that a good part of the life of any man or woman is conditioned by the reality of work. It would be hard to find a responsible person who of his own volition is without some occupation or job, and this goes for those who work in the home, outside the home, whatever kind of a job we might do. Many work for noble human objectives, to support their families, to make a future for themselves. Others will take up a particular activity in order to develop some special skill. Many motives are possible. Many more will work with less worthy aims, to amass wealth, to gain fame, power, to assert themselves, to get a hold of what they need for the gratification of their passions. Many different motives motivate people to give themselves to their professions. But our Lord wants those who follow him in the midst of the world to be people who work well. This is the greatest motive to give ourselves wholeheartedly to our professions. Our Lord wants those who follow him in the midst of the world to be people who work well. They must be known for the quality of their work, which will have the prestige of excellence, and be thoroughly competent in their job or profession. That's why Christians and non-Christians alike sought out Saints Cosmas and Damian, not just because they practiced medicine for free, but because they did it well. They excelled in their profession. Christians cannot be slapdash in their approach to their work. They must be people who will stand out, visibly motivated by noble human objectives, because one's work, of whatever kind it be, is where we must practice the human as well as the supernatural virtues. And for a Christian, there's something new. There's a novelty about work. We have this in common with all of humanity. We have to work on earth. But the Christian brings something new to this work. Apart from the features we have mentioned, he does his work for God. He realizes it's the will of God that he work on earth, that he contribute to society, to making the earth a place where it's possible and even easy to save our souls, to live the Christian life, to practice virtue, to perfect ourselves, to become conformed to Christ. So he does his work for God. He presents it to him, to God, that is, as a daily offering, which will have eternal value. Not just temporary, earthly value, but eternal value, because it's done for supernatural motives. And the Christian discovers new treasures in his work because all the pathways of the earth can be an occasion for meeting Christ. As one saint, Saint Ave Maria Escrivá, would say in so many different ways. And he gives us a beautiful example of this. Saint Ave Maria Escrivá developed a whole spirituality of sanctifying ourselves in our daily occupations. And he gives a beautiful example of how this can be done. He says, from his memoirs, I remember one stay of mine in a city in Spain called Burgos. Our walks with fellow young men would sometimes take us as far as the monastery of Las Huelgas. On other occasions, we would find our way to the cathedral. These would be youth that he would be instructing, youth that would be discerning a vocation. With them, he would go on walks. I used to enjoy climbing up the cathedral towers to get a close view of the ornamentation at the top, a veritable lacework of stone that must have been the result of very patient and laborious craftsmanship. As I chatted with the young men who accompanied me, I used to point out that none of the beauty of this work could be seen from below. To give them a material lesson in what I had been previously explaining to them, I would say, this is God's work. This is working for God. To finish your personal work perfectly, with all the beauty and exquisite refinement of this tracery stonework. Seeing it, my companions would understand that all the work we had seen was part of a prayer, a loving dialogue with God. This was stonework. This was at the top of the bell tower of a cathedral. It was normal work. But it was part of a prayer, a loving dialogue with God. The men who spent their energies up there were quite aware that no one at street level could appreciate their efforts. No one would see it from down there. Their work was for God alone. Now, the saint goes on, now do you see how our professional work can bring us close to our Lord? Do your job as those medieval stonemasons did, and your work too will be a work for God, a human work with a divine substance and finish. Even though not a single person may see it, nobody might appreciate it. God sees it, values it, gives it an eternal value. And that is enough to encourage us to put an effort into finishing our jobs perfectly, lovingly, as Christ would have us do. It's the end of the reflection by Father Francis Fernandez. Going back to ourselves, so St. Cosmas and Damian teach us that, remind us rather of that, of how important it is that we incorporate our daily lives, our lives of daily work, whatever work that might be, inside the home, outside the home, whatever profession we have. We incorporate that into our spiritual lives, and we offer it up to God to give it an eternal value, that we give it a supernatural motive, that we do it for Christ, for a love of Him, because He wants us to do it well, and in that way to contribute to the sanctification of society, of the church, and of our own selves. Praised be Jesus and Mary.